It's unfortunate how often our favorite sitcoms have to say goodbye to some of our favorite characters prematurely. Michael Scott, Ann Perkins, Lindsay Bluth, sort of, Gina Peretti, and the list goes on. The goodbye episode has become almost a tradition of sorts for sitcoms, and to varied success. The Office's two-parter, Goodbye Michael, and Parks and Rec's Ann and Chris are both remembered fondly, but a lot of goodbyes end up not being memorable. That's if they even get a proper goodbye. Lindsay Bluth, Ryan, Kelly, Shirley, and Pierce all barely get goodbyes despite being pretty major characters in their respective shows. And I understand in a lot of these situations their contracts were up, and it probably took a lot to get them to even do a scene. But that's what makes geothermal escapism even more special to me. Donald Glover coming back in this episode were born out of pure love for the character, and specifically his relationship with Abed. So in the first of my 3 sitcom videos this month, let's examine what made geothermal escapism such a great goodbye episode and what made Community such a special TV show in general. Most, if not all, sitcom goodbyes follow a pretty similar premise and structure. The episode mainly focuses on the character leaving, doing a lot of what they are known for in the show, sometimes in very exaggerated ways, before at the end quickly getting sappy and throwing them out the door. There's nothing wrong with this really, and these are still pretty good episodes of TV. But I don't know how well this episode premise works as a goodbye. Most of these episodes ignored the emotional elements until the very end, which can make most of the episode feel forgettable and risk making the emotional moments feel rushed. Geothermal escapism has a great premise, a school-wide game of hot lava. Dan Harmon loves making these type of episodes, using a school-wide event to actually address something more important happening underneath the surface. Modern Warfare, Pillows and Blankets, and for a few paintballs more are all great examples of this. Focusing back on Modern Warfare, on the surface the paintball game serves as just an homage to action movies like Die Hard and The Matrix, while underneath it finally addresses the sexual tension building between Jeff and Britta. Despite how much fun what's happening on the surface is, the real heart of the episodes are the character work happening underneath. I think geothermal escapism does the best job of combining the wackiness happening on the surface with the heart underneath. While the school-wide events are great vehicles for dealing with the real conflict underneath, the conflict usually isn't actually tied too much to the event. Like I said, it's more of a vehicle. For reasons I'll get more into later, the game of hot lava is both a classic Greendale shenanigan and a visual representation of what's going on in Abed's mind. So while moments like these are funny, they also have a lot of emotional depth and sincerity to them. It's impressive how something so silly was able to never lose its focus, which transitions me into point number 2. In the case of episodes like The Office's aforementioned Goodbye Michael or Brooklyn Nine-Nine's Four Movements, they are goodbye episodes, but they can tend to seem like they forget that fact for a large part of the episode. The sappy moments and acknowledgement that this is goodbye are usually reserved for the very ending. Which, yeah, can lead to some easy tears, but overall the episode as a whole ends up feeling a little unfocused, and like I mentioned earlier, the episode itself isn't very memorable. Mainly, only the last 4 to 5 minutes are. Britta serves as the audience's reminder throughout geothermal escapism that, despite how much fun we're having, we should acknowledge and appreciate Troy and Donald Glover before it's too late to. Much like everyone in the study group but Britta, it's easy to get distracted and forget what's really at stake. Geothermal escapism is definitely dealing with the biggest loss Community had ever seen. No disrespect to Yvette Nicole Brown or Chevy Chase, but losing Shirley and Pierce wasn't nearly the hit to Community that losing Troy was. Troy was the heart of the show, and Dan Harmon said himself that he thinks Troy leaving was when Community died. And I sort of agree with him. Now, I don't actually think Community died after Troy left. There were still some good episodes, but it was definitely never the same show again. And specifically, Abed was never the same again. Although a character like Dwight was infatuated and obsessed with Michael Scott in The Office, it wasn't that hard of a task to keep writing Dwight without Michael. Losing Troy was like losing half of Abed as well. Saying goodbye to the best character dynamic in the show. No other character from any sitcom I've ever seen have been able to match the pure chemistry and fun of Troy and Abed. As much as this is a goodbye for Troy, it's also one of the most important Abed episodes in the show. It's very heavily implied that Abed is on the spectrum, and episodes like Geothermal Escapism are important because it helps us as the audience understand how difficult these situations can be for Abed. We've seen Abed deal with problems like these before in episodes like Virtual Systems Analysis, Introduction to Finality, and probably the most popular example, Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas. Abed has a tendency to use whimsical scenarios to help him better understand and deal with these difficult situations. And out of all the episodes, this is probably the hardest situation we've seen him face yet. It's hard for me to emphasize enough how important Troy and Abed are to one another, and how good of a job this episode does of addressing how big of a step this is for Abed. It's like I was saying earlier, it's the importance of this relationship and the sincerity this episode treats Abed's struggle with that makes silly moments like these almost bring me to tears. I don't want to end this with people thinking I don't like how shows like The Office, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or Parks and Rec said goodbye. I think as episodes of their respective shows, they all work pretty well, and for some of them, the sappy bits did get some tears out of me. But like I've said a few times, these episodes as a whole aren't very memorable, and usually don't push the bar for these shows much. This once again isn't really a diss to them. More, it's a compliment to Dan Harmon and the Community staff as writers. Community can have as much fun as ever and be as wacky as ever, while still giving the most sincere goodbye I've watched on television. Seeing how Community said goodbye really represents for me how the Community writing staff came at writing the show in general, finding the most unique and creative ways to tell these hilarious and clever stories, while still never losing the focus or heart beneath. It really is the heart within all the chaos that sets Community apart from these other shows, and makes silly moments like these matter. As always, thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and go watch Geothermal Escapism.